Let's take a look at where the Dow is right now, up 204 points, reacting in real time, obviously, to the Fed Reserve's announcement at the top of the hour to leave interest rates unchanged. The pause comes at a time of economic turmoil, and for the first time in 70 years, a major economic forecaster issued a recession watch, pointing directly to President Trump's policies, if fully enacted, as the cause. Joining us now, Brendan Buck, former aide to House Speakers Paul Ryan and John Boehner, and an MSNBC political analyst. Here with me in studio, NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans and Catherine Rampell, Washington Post opinion columnist and co-host of the forthcoming evening edition of MSNBC's The Weekend. Okay, Christine. So we're about to hear from the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, about his decision. What are you going to be listening for?
Well, in their statement, the Fed says uncertainty around the economic outlook has increased. And I want to hear exactly what he says that looks like and what the potential outcome could be. I've got the Fed downgrading expectations on economic growth, saying unemployment could be higher and inflation could be higher this year than they thought just a few months ago. So really, you're seeing how this is the first snapshot of what the Fed is saying about the economy under Donald Trump's watch. And we know that there's just a lot of uncertainty about tariffs. More tariffs are coming. There are big job cuts that the president is spearheading here, and you have a lot of other policies that will definitely affect local economies. So how will that play out? That's what we listen to here.
Well, Catherine, does it tell us anything about how the Fed is feeling about what Donald Trump is doing, that it decided to hold the line?
The Fed was widely expected to pause this month, and they did exactly as expectations forecast. The real question is how they handle tariffs, how they handle Trump's other policies and their implications in the months ahead, particularly since, as the statement notes, there's a lot of uncertainty lingering here. And so, for example, if the tariffs raise prices, as they are likely to do, but they also slow investment, they slow demand, maybe they lead to less hiring, that puts the Fed in a real bind, because higher prices would imply one path for interest rates. Slower growth would imply the opposite path. So that's what I think we're going to be hearing a lot about during today's press conference is, what's the reaction function, as markets like to call it? How will they respond if they see tariffs, take effect and raise prices quite a bit?
Well, it's always been true. The Fed chair speaks, the markets listen. But, Brendan, you saw that UCLA Anderson forecast that predicts Trump policies, if fully enacted, promise a recession. The president and his top officials have not exactly pushed back, at least against the possibility. Take a listen.
Mr. Secretary, can you guarantee the American people here and now that there will be no recession on President Trump's watch?
Well, Chris, you know that there are no guarantees. Like, who would have predicted COVID?
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time.
Given what we've been hearing, do you think, Brendan, that Americans can have confidence that the Trump administration will respond to any emerging warning signs of a recession?
Honestly, the thing I'm actually heartened by is the fact that he seems to be aware that there is potential pain from what he's doing. And Donald Trump, for a long time, has talked about tariffs as if, it's a magic wand you can wave and change how the economy works and bring jobs back and recreate American manufacturing, when, of course, we know there are real consequences to it. So at least he seems aware to that reality. Look, we've hit on the right word here, uncertainty.
But let me stop you there, because is an awareness of pain the same thing as an acknowledgement of long term? There are lots of people who disagree about the gain that may come as a result of it and his projections for what the outcome will be.
Well, to me, the question is, how much patience does Donald Trump himself has? He's urging people to have patience, but none of this happens overnight. It doesn't even happen in a matter of months. You're not going to onshore manufacturing back into America in the next 6 months. That's the type of thing where you need to have tariffs in place for years before businesses are going to make those kinds of different decisions about where they're putting their capital and jobs. So I don't know that Donald Trump has the patience for the markets to be rattling and be down for months at a time. He wants to be really popular. He wants to talk about how high the Dow is. That's the stuff that he cares about. And if he continues to have a market where, for instance, interest rates can't come back down when he was elected on lowering the cost of goods, I think he may find that he's not as committed to the tariffs as he perhaps thought he could be, because there are real consequences, and maybe he's learning on the fly.
I mean, maybe the bigger question is how much patience do the American people have, Christine? And, I'm sure you talk to investment advisors and people who are out there with folks who have 401ks, or people who have been hoping and waiting to buy a new car before tariffs go into effect to be able to afford a house.
Well, look, I just got off the phone with a retirement planner who told me that, look, his clients who are close to retirement are very concerned. Even though they've prepared, as you get closer to retirement, you have less in the stock market, but they're really concerned this is the beginning of something big that's a negative event for them instead of the end of just 4 weeks of a sour stock market. You talk to business owners, they still don't know exactly what conditions are going to be like for them the next month. They don't know what these reciprocal tariffs on potentially trillions of dollars of goods, what that is going to look like for their business. So they're not hiring extra workers, or not building an extra, facility, or they're just on hold. They're frozen in place, and all of that is dampening for economic activity. And so we're just in the beginning of what this is going to look like.
Most of us are not economists, obviously, Catherine, and a lot of people will be looking at their phones, and one of the words that they see frequently is stagflation. What is that, and what should people know about it?
Stagflation is a kind of a corny term that means we are seeing slower growth or potentially a recession combined with higher prices. And that's exactly what we were getting at before when I was saying, how will the Fed handle this? And in fact, if you look at their forecasts today, they revised their forecasts such that they think there will be less growth this year and higher prices, exactly the stagflationary forces that we might fear. How big those forces will be, we don't necessarily know, in part because, as Christine points out, we don't know how big the tariffs are going to be. We don't know how firms will respond to them, how much they'll pull back on investment. Will they start laying off workers, et cetera? But that's the worst possible outcome, because you have all of the possible pain that results from these poorly thought out policies, and not a lot of tools available to address either. Because again, if the Fed tries to target higher prices, that puts the growth, the unemployment issues that they're worried about in a worse situation, and vice versa.
Brendan, I'm sure you know that President Trump has been calling for lower interest rates. He didn't get it today, in any case. I wonder if it could set up a clash with the Fed, if it gives him an out, if things don't get better. He says the Fed should have lowered interest rates. Give me your sense of the big picture here and the politics of this. For anything that happens to Trump also trickles down to the Republican Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And the shame of it is Donald Trump didn't have to do a whole lot to have a good economy. I think the economy was pretty crummy during Joe Biden, but we got through a lot of it thanks in part to the handling of it by the Fed. And all Donald Trump had to come in was not start a tariff war, deregulate the economy a bit, and prevent a massive tax increase next year. And I think people would have been very excited to start investing, and you would have had record highs in the economy. But he couldn't help himself because he believes that tariffs are good. And you're going to, of course, start seeing a lot more anxiety among Republicans. This was a pretty simple formula. I think they had all figured that they were going to be in a good place, and they have a great story to hold the House, for example, in the midterms on a strong economy. Donald Trump was elected on the economy. He was elected on the cost of living. And if he forgets that, and allows himself to keep going down this road and keep making immigration a bigger priority in a way that will also hurt the economy, there are going to be consequences for it. And I think he's aware that there are political or there are personal consequences for him. If they lose the House, he remembers that he got impeached last time Democrats were in charge. So I think he's a little more focused on that. So again, maybe I'm being optimistic here. I'm hoping he realizes that there are reasons to reverse course a little bit, both for the economy and for his own personal politics.
Christine Romans and Catherine Rampell, thank you. Brendan, stay with us.